Hi, peace lovers. It's December, and I'm still practicing my Kitty Compost voice. For these last couple of weeks of the year, I've gathered 17 holiday inspired public domain readings from writers like L. Frank Baum, Henry David Thoreau, and Charles Dickens. It's a bit quirky, I know, but so is Kitty, and so is the new Peace podcast series arriving right here on New Year's Day, the Peace Experiments, Experiment Zero. A humming government facility, a skeptical fact-checking goat, and a classroom full of teens collide when reporter Kitty Ocampos begins investigating the myths that keep peace just out of reach. The peace experiments explore what happens when young people finally ask the questions adults avoid. And perhaps you've been hearing the Next Peacelands here on the podcast. We'll be returning soon to the practice of holding peaceful intention for the specific war zones and the countries that supply weapons to them. But during this stretch of Kitty Reed's Holiday Lit for Peace, the Next Peacelands will simply offer the names of some of the spiritual organizations working quietly and steadily for peace. You can add your own peace intentions to their hopeful rivers of peace if you choose to stay through the end of this episode. As always, the creative books and projects I make for peace can be found at aviskalfsbeek.com, and the music for the Next Peacelands comes from the talented Javier Peque Rodriguez. For a printable list of all Kitty's holiday readings with links to the full texts, visit aviskalfsbeek.com/holiday or see the show notes. Joy and peace to you and yours and to the world. Now over to Kitty. Today's reading comes from John Burroughs, the American naturalist who spent his life learning the landscape one careful walk at a time. Born on a Catskills farm in 1837, Burroughs grew up close to the rhythms of weather, farming, and wildlife, and he carried that early knowledge into the essays that made him one of the most beloved nature writers of his day. He had a remarkable gift for describing the outdoors without sentimentality, clear-eyed, patient, and grounded in the belief that attention itself can steady the spirit. Winter Sunshine, published in 1875, gathers several of his early essays. Burroughs writes about cold air, long shadows, bird tracks, and the way a winter hillside can teach you something simply by being itself. He wasn't trying to offer escape. He wanted readers to notice what the world looks like when you stop rushing past it. In his view, the land was not scenery, but company. We'll read just a brief portion today, enough to feel Burroughs' calm voice and to notice how winter, in his telling, becomes a kind of moral tutor, asking us to be attentive, patient, and humble. And well, honey, I could read the penciled dates off the margin of an old field journal if it helped us slow our step. Sometimes the plainest observations are the ones that open us up to peace, especially when nobody, for goodness sake, is holding a gosh darn gun. Following is an excerpt from Winter Sunshine by John Burroughs. An American resident in England is reported as saying that the English have an atmosphere but no climate. The reverse of this remark would apply pretty accurately to our own case. We certainly have a climate, a two-edged one that cuts both ways, threatening us with a sunstroke on the one hand and with frost stroke on the other. But we have no atmosphere to speak of in New York and New England, except now and then during the dog days or the fitful and uncertain Indian summer. An atmosphere, the quality of tone and mellowness in the near distance, is the product of a more humid climate. Hence, as we go south from New York, the atmospheric effects become more rich and varied until on reaching the Potomac, you find an atmosphere as well as a climate. The latter is still on the vehement American scale, full of sharp and violent changes and contrasts, baking and blistering in the summer and nipping and blighting in the winter. But the spaces are not so purged and bare. The horizon wall does not so often have the appearance of having just been washed and scrubbed down. There is more depth and visibility to the open air, a stronger infusion of the Indian summer element throughout the year than is found farther north. The days are softer and more brooding, and the nights more enchanting. It is here that Walt Whitman saw the full moon pour down night's nimbus floods, as any one may see her during the full from October to May. There is more haze and vapor in the atmosphere during that period, and every particle seems to collect and hold the pure radiance until the world swims with lunar outpouring. Is not the full moon always on the side of fair weather? I think it is Sir William Herschel who says her influence tends to dispel the clouds. Certain it is her beauty is seldom lost or even veiled in this southern or semi-southern clime. Floods of the yellow gold of the gorgeous, indolent seeking sun burning, expanded the air, a description that would not apply with the same force farther north, where the air seems thinner and less capable of absorbing and holding the sunlight. Indeed, the opulence and splendor of our climate, at least the climate of the Atlantic seaboard, cannot be fully appreciated by the dweller north of the 39th parallel. It seemed as if I had never seen but a second-rate article of sunlight or moonlight until I had taken up my abode in the national capital. It may be, perhaps, because we have such splendid specimens of both at the period of the year when one values such things highest, namely in the fall and winter and early spring. Sunlight is good any time, but a bright, evenly tempered day is certainly more engrossing to the attention in winter than in summer, and such days seem the rule and not the exception in the Washington winter. The deep snows keep to the north, the heavy rains to the south, leaving a blue space central over the border states, and there is not one of the winter months but wears this blue zone as a girdle. I am not thinking especially of the Indian summer, that charming but uncertain second youth of the New England year, but of regularly recurring lucid intervals in the weather system of Virginia fall and winter, when the best our climate is capable of stand revealed. Southern days with northern blood in their veins, exhilarating, elastic, full of action, the hyperborean oxygen of the north tempered by the dazzling sun of the south, a little bitter in winter to all travelers but the pedestrian, to him sweet and warming, but in autumn a vintage that intoxicates all lovers of the open air. It is impossible not to dilate and expand under such skies. One breathes deeply and steps proudly as if he have any of the eagle nature in him. It comes to be the surface then. There is a sense of altitude about these dazzling November and December days, of mountain tops and pure ether. The earth, in passing through the fire of summer, seems to have lost all its dross and life all its impediments. But what does not the dweller in the national capital endure in reaching these days? Think of the agonies of the heated term, the ragings of the dog star, the purgatory of heat and dust, of bacon blistering pavements, of cracked and powdered fields, of dead stifling night air from which every tonic and antiseptic quality seems eliminated, leaving a residuum of sultry malaria and all diffusing privy and sewer gases that last from the 1st of July to near the middle of September. But when October is reached, the memory of these things is afar off, and the glory of the days is a perpetual surprise. I sally out in the morning with the ostensible purpose of gathering chestnuts, or autumn leaves, or persimmons, or exploring some run or branch. It is, say, the last of October or the 1st of November. The air is not balmy, but tart and pungent like the flavor of the red-checked apples by the roadside. In the sky not a cloud, not a speck, a vast dome of blue ether lightly suspended above the world. The woods are heaped with color like a painter's palette, great splashes of red and orange and gold. The ponds and streams bear upon their bosoms leaves of all tints, from the deep maroon of the oak to the pale yellow of the chestnut. In the glens and nooks it is so still that the chirp of a solitary cricket is noticeable. The red berries of the dogwood and spicebush and other shrubs shine in the sun like rubies and coral. The crows fly high above the earth, as they do only on such days, forms of ebony floating across the azure, and the buzzards look like kingly birds sailing round and round. Or it may be later in the season, well into December. The days are equally bright, but a little more rugged. The mornings are ushered in by an immense spectrum thrown upon the eastern sky. A broad bar of red and orange lies above the low horizon, surmounted by an expanse of color in which green struggles with yellow and blue with green half the way to the zenith. By and by the red and orange spread upward and grow dim. The spectrum fades and the sky becomes suffused with yellow-white light, and in a moment the fiery scintillations of the sun begin to break across the Maryland hills. Then before long the mists and vapors uprise like the breath of a giant army, and for an hour or two one is reminded of a November morning in England. But by mid-forenoon the only trace of the obscurity that remains is a slight haze, and the day is indeed a summons and a challenge to come forth. Thank you for listening and allowing me to practice Kitty's reporting voice for the big story ahead. Now stay with me a few minutes longer if you're able for the Next Peacelands. Following is a special holiday edition of the Next Peacelands, where we pause on listing the war zones and weapons suppliers. Instead, we rest our intention of peace on a few of the spiritual organizations working tirelessly toward peace. While this list is far from comprehensive, the total number of organizations, large and small, would number in the thousands if we included all who work daily for peace. I ask that you consider taking this time to add your own intention of peace to those working daily toward that goal. Mennonite Central Committee. Peace is here. Community of Santa Hidio. Peace is here. The Network for Religious and Traditional Peacemakers. Peace is here. Religions for Peace. Peace is here. Pax Christi International. Peace is here. American Friends Service Committee. Peace is here. Lutheran Peace Fellowship. Peace is here. The International Fellowship of Reconciliation. Peace is here. Baptist Peace Fellowship. Peace is here. Community Peacemaker Teams. Peace is here. Episcopal Peace Fellowship. Peace is here. Friends Peace Teams. Peace is here. Muslim Peace Fellowship. Peace is here. Buddhist Peace Fellowship. Peace is here. Quaker Peace and Social Witness. Peace is here. Network of Christian Peace Organizations. Peace is here. Network of Spiritual Progressives. Peace is here. United Religions Initiative. Peace is here. The Christian Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament. Peace is here. Agape International Spiritual Center. Peace is here.